Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Satwa and I hope this video finds you well. If you are new to this place, please consider subscribing. And to all my returning subscribers, thank you so much for your support and welcome back. I'm coming to do a comparison between Lattafa's Nasheet and then Ard Al Zaafaran's Satwa. Someone requested that I do the comparison, but I didn't have Satwa, so I was able to get a decant of this and I've been able to test it out. What I have realized is that they are both going to give you that Ani feel, that Nishane Ani feel. However, there are some very significant differences between these two fragrances. First of all, the three fragrances, Nasheet, Satwa, and Ani, have very little in common when it comes to the nose structure. However, somehow they find themselves smelling so much alike. So I'll do the comparison between these two and let you know which one I feel is closer to Ani in my opinion. So when it comes to Nasheet, the nose structure are Gaiac wood, nutmeg, frankincense, cashmere, and sandalwood. Whilst when it comes to Satwa, we have vanilla, caramel, which I smell none of. Then we have amber, white musk, sandalwood, and then patchouli. I've had Nasheet in my collection for the longest, which is about a year ago. And anytime I compare the nose structure to what I smell, which includes the frankincense and the nutmeg, I never really got those notes in this fragrance. What I predominantly got were the ginger, although it doesn't have the note of ginger, I somehow get ginger in it. The ginger I perceive in Nasheet, although it is not part of the nose structure, feels very fresh, very airy, very effervescent. When you compare these two fragrances, there are very noticeable differences. And for the first time, I'm getting that nutmeg and frankincense just because I smell something, quite different from the Satwa. Satwa gives me something much more denser, much more richer as compared to this, which I find a little more fresher and bright. It also doesn't have the note of vanilla, but somehow I perceive vanilla in Nasheet. Satwa, on the other hand, is much more intense when it comes to that vanillic nuance, coupled with something I perceive as cardamom. It doesn't have cardamom, but the OG Ani has cardamom. But I get that, spicy, peppery cardamom vibe in this one, as well as some intense vanilla and some patchouli. This one is heavy when it comes to the vanilla, whilst this one is a little, dialed back in terms of the vanilla. What I predominantly get now, because I've been able to compare this Nasheet to Satwa, is that fresh, airy, light, a bit citrusy sort of ginger vibes, coupled with the creamy sandalwood and then nutmeg. I used not to get that, but currently I do. Satwa is going to give you everything that Nasheet is, including a much more intense vanilla, a much more intense pepper and cardamom, and something much more masculine leaning as compared to this. Satwa feels a little more masculine leaning to me. There is something in it that reminds me of men's cologne, as opposed to Nasheet, which reminds me of a very unisex fragrance. It feels much more unisex to me. There is a vibe in this one that immediately reminds me of masculine fragrances, whilst Nasheet, is very unisex in my opinion, probably because this one is like denser, it has much more depth as opposed to this one, which is like a little lighter and much more effervescent. Nasheet is also creamy, but not to the extent to which I perceive the creamy sandalwood in Satwa. This one is so much intense, so much stronger. This one gives me like a much more longevity or lasting power as compared to this. Satwa is going to give you approximately 8 to 9, even 10 hours on clothes, whilst this one, is a little less in terms of the performance. There is this orange I also perceive in this that I do not perceive in Nasheet. The citric I perceive in Nasheet are bergamot and ginger. Ginger is not a citric, but somehow it has been made to the extent that it feels like a citric to me in Nasheet, while the citric I get in this one is like a predominant orange. It doesn't stay the note of orange, but on skin, it gives you a very, loud orange, zesty vibes. Though it has not been listed, I strongly get orange nuance in this one. It feels like it's one of the main character at the top notes, As soon as you spray Satwa, you get that intense orange zesty vibes coupled with that, spicy pepper and that cardamom. The openings of Nasheet and Satwa are the most similar, but when they begin to dry down, there is a very significant difference I find between the two of them. This one dries down to a very intense cardamom and vanilla with some patchouli, with that orangey nuance, whilst this one dries down to that frankincense and that nutmeg, which I'm getting so much more now that I've been able to compare this one to something else. In addition, Satwa feels much more woody. It feels like, it has much more wood to it as opposed to this one, although this one also is quite woody because it has the Gaiac wood as part of the nose structure. But in comparison to Satwa feels much more woody. It feels like it could get some cedar in it, which makes it lean a little more masculine. To me, what I perceive the most in Satwa are going to be something like cedar, something like, the vanilla, the patchouli. I also get some cardamom. I also get some orange in it, although all those things are not part of the nose structure. And when it comes to this, I perceive that frankincense and the nutmeg, as well as the ginger and a bit of a bergamot sort of feel to it. Between these two fragrances, I feel Nasheet by Lattafa is the closest to Ani because this one takes like a slightly different direction in that it becomes much more masculine leaning. I feel Ani is a perfect unisex scent, so this one maintains that unisex, essence of Ani, but this one feels slightly masculine leaning. Nasheet gives me Ani, but like a less intense, less vanillic, less, creamy sandalwood version of Ani. Whilst this one gives me that creamy sandalwood of the OG Ani, but so much more spicier with that cardamom, and also some additional notes which I perceive make this one come across as so much masculine as compared to Ani. In a nutshell, between these two fragrances, if you want something much more masculine leaning, go for Satwa. But if you want something much more unisex and even, something that women will feel comfortable wearing, go for Nasheet. If you want something much more spicy, go for this because it gives me a much intense pink pepper and cardamom. And if you want something much more fresher and effervescent, go for Nasheet. You will get that spicy ginger nuance in Nasheet much more than you can perceive in this one. I don't really get that ginger nuance in this one at all. It is much more of that cardamom, that pink pepper, that vanilla, also some patchouli, and not so much of the caramel that it says it has. I don't get anything caramel at all. In Nasheet, I'm beginning to appreciate that frankincense and that nutmeg, so much more after being able to compare it to Satwa. Both fragrances are very beautiful, but I'll consider Satwa as the haze version, whilst this one is going to come across as the more feminine, leaning one, although very unisex to me. And this one seems much more closer to the OG Ani in terms of that ginger feel, that creamy sandalwood feel, and that, vanilla. But this one feels so much vanillic as compared to Nasheet. At this point, especially for men, I think it is going to be just a matter of choice. Are you looking for something which feels a lot more masculine leaning or something which feels a lot more unisex? If you're a man, I would say go for Satwa because it's going to give you that, much more of that masculine kick. And I also recommend this for, both men and women, but mostly maybe women because this one feels so much masculine. That will be it for today, and I hope this video found you well. Please do not forget to give this video a thumbs up. I would really appreciate that, and I hope to see you in my next one. Take care. Bye-bye.